booties for black girl nerds.
Henry, I'm going to start with you. Gus is the glue that holds this team together. What do you think is the secret ingredient that allows the solidarity between these guys to stay intact?
That's a very good question, and I think it's difficult for me to answer, having not been in that situation. But knowing people who have been in similar situations, obviously more recently than these guys were, there is a leadership is a particular quality, which it requires understanding where everyone's coming from and reinforcing the bonds that you're doing it for each other, rather than necessarily anything else. The one thing I hear consistently whenever I hear soldiers coming back from any kind of conflict is that they weren't necessarily fighting for king and country. They weren't fighting for a flag, but they were fighting for the person next door to them. And when it comes to something like World War II, it's a little different because we're talking about the likes of Hitler and a Nazi regime, which was particular and completely mad when you look back at World War II and you realise quite what was going on. If you were to write a fictional story about that and World War II never happened, no one would believe it. They'd be like, this is fantasy. There's no way that could happen. And so having a character like Hitler for everyone to actually join up against, and when the going gets hard, the going gets really tough, and you think this mission is going to go belly up, we might as well save ourselves. When you think of what Hitler's actually doing, it makes it a lot easier to go, it's worth just taking that shot anyway, just in case, if the chance is this big, we should take it. And I think that's the kind of glue which holds these kind of people together in these scenarios, because it's an impossible scenario. The mission itself, on paper, is a suicide mission. There's no way it's going to be successful. Yeah. And yet, I believe, in reality, not a single shot was fired, and it changed the course of the war.
Wow. I mean, this is such an incredible story, and it's so incredible to believe that it's based on real events.
Yeah.
Hero, for you, Henry has this very interesting backstory as we learn about his brother and how he succumbed to the Nazis. And that really planted like a seed of hate in him for the Nazis. So do you think that his hate has shifted into more protecting these guys that he sees as honorary brothers?
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that. And I think we have to remember that these guys would have been on that boat together for a very, very long time.
Yeah. Very
close quarters, and you'd really start to become really fond of each other and care for each other and want to protect and fight for each other. But ultimately, it's as you mentioned, it's said in the towards the start of the film when everyone gets their kind of little character breakdown, that everyone has a very personal vendetta for Nazis and that that whole movement, more so than just the idea of it as a bigger thing. It's very personal to all of them in their own way, without going into detail. So I think it's a combination of that personal vendetta, along with the fact that, as Henry said, it's about fighting for the person next door, and just be on that ship for months on a tiny little trawler. So yeah, for those two reasons combined, I think that's why they work well together.
Yeah. Especially with your bosses saying, "Turn around," and you're like, "No." Maybe that's part of it.
Right, right. Alex, for you, in a group like this, we always need the man with the plan. And your character is able to get us from point A to point B. So for Jeffrey, do you think that his ability is a natural born gift, or does it take experience and training to be a master planner?
I think there's a point in the movie where, without any spoilers, he kind of is surprised himself, I think when you're in that position, I think you are.
I thought that was just your performance.
Yeah, I think that I think these guys collaborated together. I think, as you can see in the film, they're firing out ideas of how to progress forward. And going back to what you said about these band of brothers, it's not only about having each other's back; it's about a bigger cause. Understanding what their life mission is, and thankfully it was, a successful one.
Indeed. Keeping in the theme of brotherhood, Henry, back to you. This story really felt like it was centered in that, and that it was about forming these bonds. So was the goal for Gus and these men to convey a sense of community on screen?
I don't know if that was necessarily a direct and active goal. I think it's a byproduct of the nature of events like this and how it affects people and how it does bring people together. And also Guy's nature of filmmaking. He's very good at the ensemble cast filled with big characters. And so I think it's a byproduct of all of those things rather than necessarily something we want to go out there and make this a notable piece.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I love this film. I love the audaciousness of it, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Hi.
Eiza, I want to start with you. You play this very skilled markswoman, and I think it takes like a lot of skill to have the right stance and the right pose. So, like, when you were going through training, what did you do to make sure that your shooting looked effective?
Well, I've already shot before. I've done a couple of action films before, so it wasn't as bad. But it was funny. I mean, he was there. He was like, Guy would be like, "That's not how you hold that gun." I was like, oh. It was more confusing because it's older guns. I've shot, whatever guns they have on these day and age. I don't know much about it, but they're older style of weapons. So it was more about the complexity of like actually pulling them and doing the thing, and they're original, so the heftiness of them was pretty intense. But it was great. I mean, we shot it so quickly. That big scene that I go through all the sequence that I just grabbed them. We shot it in like 10 minutes, and like boom, boom, boom. He just like next, and he just passed me things. So yeah, I mean, it was honestly, that was the least of my worries in this project. The concerning part was like prepping the accent, prepping the words, prepping the dialogue. He's so dialogue heavy that was sort of the more complex side of my job. It was nice to not have to worry about the guns. Let the boys worry about the weapons. I'll do the words.
Indeed, absolutely. Babs, over to you. Richard is a very fascinating character, and he's one of the few fictional characters in this film. But he has a really compelling role. The fact that he is this Black agent that has this small business, but mostly Nazi clientele. So how is he able to, what do you think it is about his skill set or even his personality that allows him to navigate in these spaces?
Well, I think, first of all, that part for him was set in Africa, so he could sort of meld in and feel a bit comfortable. There are people that look like me around. And it's also, Nazi and this, whatever, wherever you're coming from, your ideology. At the end of the day, most people like this love money, right? It's about taking from others, stealing from others, really. You're just trying to steal land, you're trying to steal resources. And so he was able to dance with the devil to trap the devil. Really. That's, that's what it is. So yeah, it was a pleasure. Guy calls up and you're like, yeah, I'll do that. I will be that agent.
Dance with the devil to trap the devil. I like that. Cary, over to you. M is a bit reluctant at first to recruit Gus into Operation Postmaster. He thinks he has a little bit of an attitude. Why do you think he's so apprehensive about him?
I think that he knew that Gus is a guy who kind of plays to his own tune. He kind of a little bit more of a rebel and can't be controlled so much. And M is a guy who wanted to kind of control things. So I think that he was nervous about that, especially by the fact that Gus wanted to pick his own team, So M had to sort of let go, realizing that he was the right guy for the job, but not to try and control him too much.
Indeed, yeah, and we see how that plays out in the film. Eiza, back to you. Did you connect with any of the living descendants of Marjorie Stewart as you were prepping for this role?
Well, that was really hard, actually, getting information about like the lineage of the familiar, anyone that there was around. It was more about also just educating yourself about the current sort of book. The book is pretty extent, like it really expands into the individual like characters and Gus and Marjorie, and it really dives deep into it. I did a lot of research on her. The thing is, it's complicated to get information on them, and that's why I was really honored to play her on this film, because I do think women had such an incredible impact in that era, and the SOE and her impact in this mission was pivotal for it to happen, undeniable. So I was just really honored, and I hope they, you know, find her fun and entertaining. And she's just, I find Marjorie as a character just fun and lovable, and just, she really has a heart. I really like those scenes where she's really feeling for what she's watching, and she's really, and that's why I love our dynamic, because he's there for her. Like, in a world that feels so inhumane, Guy made sure to imprint a lot of humanity, even though in little moments that creates, you know, this, it raises the stakes of the mission.
Absolutely. I love the fact that she's a real person too, and it's just
Yeah.
crazy to see like the way the trajectory of her character develops throughout this film. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate
You're
it.
wonderful.
Love this movie.
Thank
Such a
you.
cool name.
Yeah, I love it. I was thinking to
That's
say
all
that.
it is.
That's awesome. You're wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. Jerry, the music in this film felt like a supporting character. And your movies have a legacy of having music that has resonated with us throughout the years. I think about the scores in films like Top Gun and Beverly Hills Cop. So how important was using music as a tool for storytelling in this film?
It always tells the audience the emotion that they should be feeling. It's like music from the gods. It's wonderful. It creates the empathy, everything that you want our audiences to feel.
Yeah, it really resonated with me. I just loved the score in this movie. And this film is filled with action, it's humorous, it's entertaining, and there's also like a theme of brotherhood in this story. So what do you want audiences specifically to connect to when they watch this film?
I think we want to educate them. We want them to know that this Churchill took this enormous risk by going around Parliament to have these ungentlemanly men going behind enemy lines to kind of disrupt the Nazi U-boats. And he was very successful at it. And it kind of changed the course of the war. It allowed the Americans to come over because the oceans were a little safer, because they couldn't refuel as many of their U-boats or fix them. So I think it's educational, and yet it's also fun and engaging, and you'll love the characters. So it's a kind of entertainment I love to give audiences.
It was hard to figure out which character I liked the most because everybody was so fun in their own different way. This story is adapted from real life events. What parts of the film, or how much of it, was based in historical moments versus you guys taking creative liberties?
Well, you don't know what the men actually were like, what their humor was like. You had no idea, but everything is accurate on what they did. The mission is completely accurate. And what's interesting is these guys are so heroic. None of them made it to the end of the war. They were all killed on various missions, not on this one, but on the next few. Every mission they lost one or two men. Lassen was the only one who lasted to the end of the war, and then he was killed. So they're pretty heroic young men.
Such an incredible story, this film. You know, your movies are the reason why we go to the theater. And COVID at one point posed a real threat for us going into the theater. Now that we are finally kind of going back to normal and going to the theaters is normalized now, what lessons have you learned as a filmmaker from pre-COVID to COVID to now, and how significant it is to be in a theater and see a movie?
It's a group experience, it really is. You love when people laugh together, when they cry together, when they applaud together. It's something you want to be a part of it because you have that big screen, you have phenomenal sound, and it just moves you. It's nice to be around other people to enjoy something.
And we certainly enjoy your films when we go to the theater.
Thank you so much.
And we enjoyed this film very much. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I really appreciate it.
Of course, you've been a big force in my career, so I appreciate that.
Oh,
You've always been very kind to me.
thank you. And I'm appreciative of you saying that, so thank you.
Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds. Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds.